And welcome back to the second segment. We're going to discuss now safety, both on the range and in the home. It is our prime directive. Without being safe, responsible gun owners, well, we're setting ourselves up for legal ramifications as well as severe, injury to other people. There are 4 rules that are quantified by Colonel Jeff Cooper of Gunsight. Some people quibble back and forth a bit on these rules, and as you further in your development as a shooter and gun owner, you can understand some of their more finer points. But right now, let's just lay the foundation, the basics. Number 1, all weapons are always loaded. So we have to accept the fact that all weapons are always loaded. That means we've acquired the mindset that I have in my hand a lethal instrument. The consequences of a negligent action at that point are such that someone could die. So we are going to start from the basis that all weapons are always loaded. We're going to afford that weapon that respect by always pointing the muzzle in a safe direction. Now, a safe direction is a direction in which, if the weapon were to discharge, the likelihood of someone being injured is minimized to the extent possible. Now, think about this in your home. When you're going to check the status of your pistol or load it up, if that muzzle was pointed off in a direction at a wall, well, who was behind that wall? What about the floor? Do you have a basement? These are all things to take into consideration. There's actually a product on the market, it's a little hunk of Kevlar you can purchase. It's called Safe Direction. And it would stop a pistol bullet, which is kind of a useful thing in case you have that moment of humanity. And don't think for a second that you can't not have a moment of humanity. So, weapon in a safe direction. Always loaded. We're going to keep our fingers straight and outside the trigger guard in a position called index or register. On a Glock, and this is a facsimile of a Glock 19, if I can feel metal and not plastic, I know my trigger finger is well off the trigger. This is important, particularly with pistols that are striker fired like the Glock, where there's no real external safety that you manipulate in order to render the gun fully functional. So, finger straight and off the trigger guard until you made the conscious decision to fire. Let's have some examples of what that looks like. This picture was taken outside of Fallujah in November of 2004. That was then First Sergeant, now retired Sergeant Major Randy Casal of the 1st Marine Division. And he was in a house, isolated, cut off from other Marines for several hours, defending a wounded Marine. Now you're going to notice that his thighs have been shredded with shrapnel. And he now has 4 extra holes in his butt because he got shot in the butt twice. Also notice the position of his trigger finger as he leaves the fight. Finger straight and off the trigger. And on his other hand is his Marine Corps fighting knife. So if he can do that under those circumstances, surely we can do the same here on the safe range context. Another example.
Dear God!
So what happened there was the young man was walking down range and he tripped and he fell. Well, when we fall, we have a natural clutch response. If your finger is on the trigger when you clutch, particularly with the Glock or any other kind of striker fire gun, well, the thing's going to discharge. Frequently, that discharging sound will frighten you, or startle you, I should say, to where you clutch again. And they tend to come in pairs, negligent discharges. Something to consider. Finger straight and off the trigger until you made the conscious decision to fire. Finally, know your target and what lay beyond it. Fired at an angle, a 9mm bullet can travel a considerable distance and still have lethal effect at the end. Every shot we fire here today on the range has got to go into the berm. It's 14 feet tall, plus there's a hill, plus trees. Every shot has got to go into that berm. The 5th rule I get from my friend Tamara Keel, and that is just leave it alone. A lot of negligent discharges occur when people are distracted, fatigued, not thinking about what they're doing, and they just start handling their gun. end of a long work day, whatever. They pull it out of the holster, they're just playing, and then pow, the thing goes off. Every time you grab your pistol, your weapon, have in your mind that you're grabbing your favorite pet cobra behind the head and behave accordingly. So back in the day, there was always a statement, people, accidental discharges. Oops, I had an accident. Oops, I had an accident. Well, if you have a loaded firearm in your hand and it discharges when you don't intend it to, was that an accident or was that negligence? Yes, there's always that 1 in a billion of a severe malfunction of a safety system, what have you. And there are some brands that frankly are prone to that sort of thing. You can actually shake the gun and they will go off. We'll avoid those. But you cannot afford that moment of humanity, that flash of negligence. While we're on the range, keep task focus. If you have a problem, the gun quits, whichever, if something isn't quite right, raise a hand, we'll get an instructor over there right away and get you squared away. Just keep your muzzle down range. Now, a quick quiz. What is the fastest thing in the universe? Now, at this point, someone will usually say it's the speed of light. Well, jokingly, I will say this. It's the speed of stupid. Moments of negligence can happen so fast, and the consequences are so great, we just can't afford to have them. Living with a gun at home and in public. So if you have a firearm dedicated for home defense, all weapons not being used must be securely stored to prevent access by unauthorized hands. Now here's a story I'll tell from my time in the Marines, living in San Clemente, California, about 2 blocks away from the beach. It was pretty good living for a sergeant. I went to work one day and my roommate Nick went to work. He did not lock the door behind him on his way out. We had a next door neighbor, single mom with a little girl, maybe 3, 4, who had just learned how to work the locks of the doors in the apartment complex. Well, she broke away from mom, tried our door, got into the house, closed the door and locked it like, you can't get me. I will tell you right now that I would have never thought in 5 eternities that a child would have had unrestricted access to my cocked and locked 1911 that was on my bedstand. I'll confess to being a bit more ignorant then than I am now. I just never thought it was possible, and yet there it was. Things can happen that you cannot begin to plan for because it's so far outside of your realm of existence. So plan for the worst case scenario in that regard. But the flip side of that coin is weapons dedicated to home defense must be accessible. And there is a dilemma. So you consider having the gun on a nightstand. And if you do that at night, I would ask this. If you have a child at home, how many times at 2 o'clock in the morning have you had a kid crawl into bed with you? Not my experience, but I'm told it happens all the time until they hit a certain age. Well, imagine that kid can lay his hands on your pistol on the way into bed. Something to think about. There are lock boxes you can get that you can put on your nightstand with combinations for this exact scenario. Some of them are electronic, and you get 3 tries before it locks out for 15 minutes. Well, under stress, that can become a problem. On the other hand, I like the idea, after it locks out, it will flash red. So that way when you come home, you can say, little Bobby, how come my light is flashing red on my gun safe again? Were you trying to get into my gun safe? Other friends I've had with stash guns all over the place. Not particularly a fan. It just is waiting. They're waiting to be stolen. There's that, and it's unlikely that you can access a gun in the time frame you actually need it. The solution for a gun at home. Oh, one more point. If you cannot afford a safe, and they get heavy, they get pricey. I get this point from my friend Claude Werner and Paul Sharp. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot. Buy a Craftsman toolbox. Buy a padlock. Store your gun in the toolbox. Yes, your gun can still be stolen. Someone can just walk off with the whole box. But it will prevent those unauthorized, untrained hands from getting access to your pistol when you're not there to supervise it. The big thing is just wear it at home. Or certainly keep it close at hand. The bottom line of this, you are embarking upon a very highly consequential lifestyle of the decisions you have made that require a lot of conscious effort until it becomes part of your being. And even then, we have to avoid the contempt born of familiarity, because no one is immune to that.